Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video of Crown My Run. I'm hoping that this episode is going to be the start of a really new exciting adventure in my running and my YouTube career. So effectively, I've been looking at my 1 mile 5k times and they are quite a bit quicker equivalent than my 10k half marathon and what my marathon pace is. My mile PB of a 5 minute 1 second is equivalent apparently to a 16 minutes 45k and then a 34 minutes 10k and then up to a marathon which it claims I can do a 2 hour 40. Now obviously this must be what you can train towards being able to do, but I have done some pretty reasonable training over the last year and I'm nowhere near that time. I have though found a way to actually find your equivalent paces. What I think for me anyway, it might not be for everyone, is a lot better. And I will talk about that at the end of the video. But to begin with, there's another reason I think that I'm a little bit off in those higher distances than I am in the lower ones. And that's because of the rests that I've been doing for my interval training and my threshold and tempo training. I've always really, in the last year, done walk rests. 1 minute 30, 2 minutes. Occasionally I've done jogs, but not most of the time. And that is really because of the runner app that I had been using that is always walk recovery. You won't see anything on there that's not a walk recovery. They do 300s over unders where you're doing like 340 per kilometre and then 440 off, but that's it. It's pretty much just walking recoveries. I think really those tempo and threshold efforts, I've been working far too hard having a walk recovery and being able to still do them. If I'm going at 3 minutes 40, 3 minutes 45 per kilometre, which is apparently what my threshold should be, I have been capable of doing some pretty reasonable workouts with a walk recovery of 1 minute 30 or 2 minutes. But if I was to jog between, probably not a chance I'm going to manage to do that. Definitely have tried occasionally to start jogging and just died and then just continued with the walks, been able to finish the workout and be like, oh, that's not so bad. But I think I need to change something fundamentally to pick up my 10k half marathon and marathon times because it is so far off. And I'm going to today do a Garmin threshold test, see what my threshold is based on that. I'm not going to take it as gospel. As I said, I found this new way of working out your paces from if you do your 1 mile or your 5k PB, you basically work out what your 400 meter lap equivalent of that and then increase it by 5 seconds all the way up. We'll look at that a little bit later, but for now I'm going to do this Garmin threshold test, which involves doing a 15-minute warm-up and then doing 4-minute increments at different heart rate zones. So I believe it starts at about 150 and then you do 4 minutes of that and then it'll be say 155 heart rate, 160 heart rate, and you just keep picking the pace up until eventually it will say, right, your heart rate threshold is 170 and then the pace is 3 minute flat per kilometre, or a dream. And to do this, obviously you need a Garmin watch. I've got the Garmin Fenix 6X, and you also, where's that got to? You need the heart rate monitor from Garmin as well, because the watch isn't really accurate enough to do it, so it just doesn't let you if you don't have that. And I'm going to be doing it also in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. Haven't done much running in this shoe, so want to just have a little go and see what I think of it. Not a review at all is going to be done from this. This is based on my training for the next year and my threshold and how I'm going to try and change the way I train to improve more effectively. So let's head out to our favourite local park and do this Garmin threshold test.
And here we are on the warm-up, a nice little 10-15 minutes warm-up before we get to the actual test in the park. Very safe looking funfair. A nice little stride to get the legs going. And we're now at the park ready to have a look at what our threshold should be, according to Garmin anyway. And the test is underway and it wanted me to do 4 minutes at 138 to 148 heart rate. And I reckon I can stay in that sort of speed doing a nice steady effort. I think if I was doing a long run of 10 kilometers, I'd probably creep up into the 150s, but for 4 minutes, I should be able to stay comfortably in the 140s. Although probably not going at 4 minute 06 per kilometer, you can see at the bottom left. I'm going to need to rail that in a little bit. Oh yes, bad Jody, you cannot stay below 150 going at 4 minute 10 per kilometer. Come on, ease it down. There we go. 4 minutes 30 per kilometre, which is about my steady speed should be, and I'm 144 heart rate. Beautiful. And halfway through, we're managing to stay in that nice zone. 142 heart rate here, 4 minutes 36 per kilometre. Hopefully Garmin is very happy with us so far. And we're straight into part 3, no rest for the wicked. And now it wanted me to do 4 minutes at 134, so the lower bound had lowered, and then the upper bound had ever so slightly increased to 153 heart rate. And 400 metres in, I was following the stringent rules set out by Garmin, 433 per kilometre, 147. I'm eagerly awaiting being let off the reins and being able to push myself a little bit more. Coming towards the end of this rep, and I've let the heart rate creep up to 152, which is allowed, but I have had to slow down a little bit, 4 minutes 48 per kilometre, to keep it below that 153 that I need to keep it within, or who knows what Garmin will do with me. But we've made it to part 4 without being arrested, and now we have 4 minutes at 153 to 163 heart rate, so an extra 10 to play with. Let's see what speed we can get to and try and hold. Initially, as my heart rate rises to the high 50s, I can get back into the low 4s, but can I hold this speed? 500 metres later, I'm still going along in the low 4 per kilometres. My heart rate's risen to 161, but still within 2 of that limit, and I was pretty content at the moment with this speed and heart rate combination. But part 5 is upon us, and we've now got an extra 9 heart rate. We're cranking it up, 163 to 172 heart rate, and we immediately descend into the 3-minute 40s per kilometre. That'll be interesting if we can keep that speed. I'm not sure we can without going into the mid-170s at least. But moving on another 300 metres, and we're still going along 168 heart rate in the mid-340s. Perhaps doing this speed in the heat at the recent Seaford 10k I did, at least for the first few kilometres, watch that video the top right of the screen, has meant I've reaped the rewards of that hot weather training. Now it's a nice cloudy, drizzly day. I can hold this speed for much longer. And in fact, I'm speeding up ever so slightly. 170 heart rate, that's creeping up, but still within 2, but 3 minutes 41 per kilometre now. I remember thinking at this point to make sure I didn't go above 172 heart rate. This is the first time I've ever done this test, so I wasn't sure if you just abided by the rules, it would just keep making you do another 4 minutes until you couldn't anymore, so I wanted another 4 minutes. As we come to the end of the test, we maybe have crept over ever so slightly. We've got it back down to 172 now, but the test is over. It's not giving us another 4 minutes. We've been bad. I'm not really sure if it always does that same amount of tests, but it has told me that my threshold heart rate is 171. But what is the speed? Oh, 4 minutes 09 per kilometre. Wow, that is a lot lower than I expected it to be. Even doing that test, I was going in the 340s, below 170 heart rate. Obviously, threshold's meant to be what you can do for an hour, so that would have crept up, and it's meant to do clever things to sort of work out what it would be at the end of an hour, but that's a lot slower than I thought it would be. But it does show my hypothesis was correct, and I've been training at a threshold speed far too quick than this. I've been going at least 350, sometimes 345 is what my threshold's been. I do wonder whether that's a little bit slow, so I looked into the details of how Garmin works it out, and I found this little passage on the Garmin website that says that Garmin looks at your heart rate variability, which is the tiny changes in your heart rate while you're breathing in and out. It combines that with other performance measurements, which I'm assuming is the speed I'm going at, to then work out when you are working at a speed above your lactate threshold. Now, obviously, this is a lot of interpolating and isn't perfect. To get this done properly, you need to go to a lab and get threshold tests, or I think you can actually buy something to do it yourself. But from the studies I've read, it's actually meant to give a pretty close reading on reality and shows that I have indeed been working far too hard during my threshold training. Garmin does also say that your lactic threshold should be somewhere between your 10k and half marathon pace. My 10k pace being 3 minutes 48 per kilometre, and my half marathon pace being 4 minutes per kilometre for my PBs this is. So at least for the next couple of months, I'm probably going to take that lower bound 4 minute per kilometre speed as my threshold, as I think 4 minute 09 is a little bit slow, and potentially I've lost a little bit of fitness since my half marathon PB, but that was at least running at that speed for an hour and 24, and I should be able to run at that speed for an hour now. I briefly alluded to earlier a new sort of way I'm going to be running in the next few months as well, and that is following Joe Rubio's fundamental training principles to be a competitive 1500 meter runner. You can Google this easily to find it. I think it's definitely worth a read. It's probably worth a whole video itself, but the thing that struck home with me was the methodology behind how you work out the speeds you should be training at for a 5k effort, 10k effort. And I've worked this out here by looking at my mile PB, which is a 5 minute 01, 400 meter laps on that at average 74 seconds, which is 307 per kilometre. And then you add 5 seconds up to 3k, an extra 5 seconds up to 5k, and so on. And it struck me that this is a lot closer all the way through the speeds up to my marathon speed. So at the half marathon speed, 3 minutes 55 per kilometre, my PB is about 4 minutes per kilometre. So it's ever so slightly off. But getting back up the standard race equivalent calculator, putting my mile speed in, it thinks I should be able to do a 1 hour 16, 3 minutes 38 per kilometre. This new methodology in Joe Rubio's book is just so much closer. It still indicates that my mile speed is better than my 10k half marathon and marathon, but just by nowhere near as much. I just need to work at it. My 3k and 5k speed are bang on, in fact, as my 3k PB is a 10-minute flat and my 5k PB is a 17:36. So for the next 6 months of this summer, I will be following this book, training at a much slower speed for my threshold training, thanks to Garmin showing me I was being very wrong, in combination with this book also showing me I've been training a little bit too hard. So thank you for watching, everyone. Tune in next time when we're going to be doing a 1 mile track race, our first ever track race. All of the brothers are going to be there. It's going to be an awesome day. Bye, everyone.